Hello and welcome everybody to this week's DevCentral Connects. My name is Boo, one of your community evangelists with the F5 DevCentral community team. Really looking forward to this chat today. We're going to be chatting with Jason Rahm, another community evangelist with the DevCentral team. And he's been doing some interesting content lately as we kind of refocus and reshuffle for the new year of 2023. And so excited to chat with him about that. I'm going to bring him on actually very shortly here. So just leading up to that, just wanted to remind everybody, wherever you're watching from right now, you might be catching us from YouTube, from Facebook, from Twitter, from LinkedIn. You might be listening to this via podcast right now. There's all sorts of ways to be able to consume this content at this point. So wherever you are watching from, if you haven't already, please follow, please subscribe, hit the like button if possible. Check us out on podcast format as well. So we're on Google, Apple, and Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review. That helps us out quite a bit as we try to grow that medium as well. So without further ado, I am going to bring on Jason in a second here when I find the button. There he is. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Hello, 2023. I think this is my
absolutely.
first time on this year. So, yeah.
Yeah. We are, we've been discussing it with Aubrey already last week. 2023, we're reshuffling based on some feedback. We want to make sure we deliver all that exciting content to people in the way that folks want. So doing the audio podcast, drilling down deeper into the security content, which Aubrey's doing with This Month in Security, and other security content that he's focused on as well. And then Jason, you've been kind of doubling down on specific type of content that you started at the end of last year. So maybe we can go over what you've been doing there.
Sure, yeah. So I really wanted to get back into the hands-on, get everybody together and let's just solve a problem. And so we did a couple different live coding sessions, and they've been a lot of fun, and we're going to continue that this year. It's not always going to be iRules and iControl. We're going to move on to some other things as well. And in fact, I've got, I guess there's a little bit of iControl in it, but looking at packet captures and what we can do with packet captures from an automation perspective with Big IP. And so I have 2 live sessions coming up in January. One is going to be later this week. In fact, it's going to be Thursday at, I think it's 11 a.m. Pacific. You can get the details a little bit later today on the DevCentral community groups at community.f5.com. Details will be posted there, but we're gonna dig into a thing called Advent of Code. And every December, a group, I don't know if it's a group or an individual that does that, but it's a tremendous learning exercise. If you are a network background person like me, you get lost somewhere around day 8 or 9 because everything is, it really dives into pure computer science, data structures and algorithms. And if you don't know those, you don't even recognize the patterns. And so one of my goals for this year is actually to take this year's Advent of Code and work through all the exercises from beginning to end, and actually learn the algorithms and look out and because like there's a breadth first search, and there's even one that somebody solved using Dijkstra's algorithm, which for the network people among us know, like from excuse me, like OSPF and other router hop path algorithms, and so using those to solve real problems. And so if you are not a computer science backgrounded person, but you are interested in learning those things and taking your, automation scripting to the next level, especially as you get to scale, knowing those things are important. And so that's one of my goals for this year. But anyway, back to the point of looking at that on Thursday, we're just going to take what I solved in Python for day 1 or 2. I took one that would be compelling, and I think I could solve it in iRule. And I'm taking it from, solved it in a Python perspective. We're actually going to take an iRule and we're going to solve it in iRule, or at least attempt to solve it in an iRule. So it'll be a lot of fun. And then one we're going to take a look at later this month is I just made an update to the PCAP utilities on my GitHub repo at F5-ROM on GitHub, and took it to a place where you can decrypt a packet capture. And then, so we're going to take a step further. what I provided was through TLS 1.2. There are additional things you can do to the iRules, or not use the iRules at all and use the -F5 flag on TCP dump in a database setting that allows you to actually embed the session keys into the packet capture. And so then you can get it all in one. So we're going to take a look at that on the, it's not, so I'm doing one this Thursday. That's the advent of code. We're going to look at that. And then 2 weeks from this week, time and date unknown, but after I get back from a cruise that I'm taking with my boys and my wife, which we'll get out of winter and go enjoy some Miami and Bahamas sunshine and heat. But after the week after that, then we're going to take a look at can we solve the other steps of the packet capture and be able to take a packet capture on Big IP, download the files, the keys, decrypt it so that you can click on the file and you're good to go. You don't have to mess with any of that stuff.
Yeah. That's such a cool community project as well. Like, involving other people and taking in code and collaborating on something like that. That will be pretty cool. Same with the advent of code too. That one's a cool one. I think I joined you on that for I think I lasted about 2 or 3 days. The time I did it the previous year. And I think you got much further than I did. Did you finish it this year?
I have not finished it. No, I solved both. So in the advent of code, they present a problem, and it's always in the perspective of elves and reindeer trying to get from the beginning of the month to actually Christmas so they can deliver gifts and all that. And so all the challenges are always built into that kind of story. And I got through, and they do 2 challenges a day. You have your first challenge and then the second challenge. And usually the second challenge is an extension or some kind of a shift from the first challenge. And then as you get into the later days, if you don't solve the first challenge well, or set yourself up kind of thinking where that might take us, then you're kind of rewriting your first one to be able to complete the second one. So I think I got fully through day 9. I solved part 1 on a few days after that. And then we got to day 16 and I couldn't even really understand what they were asking, let alone coming up with a solution. So yeah, I kind of petered out after that, and I still read the daily solution just to kind of think through it, just as a thinking exercise. But yeah, it was too much for me. One of the last ones I solved, I know, my code was not very efficient. You talk about iRules is all about efficiency, right? Because you have potentially hundreds of thousands of connections per second coming through your Big IP, and so you can have an iRule that solves the problem, but you might have to buy 15 or 16 or 30 Big IPs from us if you have really bad iRules, which, if you need to buy 16 extra Big IPs from us, we'll gladly sell them to you. But, it's all about efficiency. And so in mine, I did get it to run. It ran like all day long. It was like 6 hours and I got the right answer. And then I'd seen somebody else, they solved it and theirs was maybe 3.5 hours. And then they refactored and it was like 6 seconds. And so,
oh, wow.
It's like you can really hurt yourself, especially if you have a lot of data and you have to look through all that data for every single process. Like if you're doing some kind of a sort and, then you get into the ON and ON squared and ON log n and, all the different operational complexities of how you manage your data. And so those things from a computer science perspective, I lack. And so I'm looking forward to this year really diving in and figuring out more on data structures and algorithms to help me. It doesn't really help me in my specific day job because I'm not a full-time developer for F5. And so to get into those things, it's really more side projects and just for my own personal learning and career growth.
Oh, I'm certain that'll come in handy for you, just going along anyways, going through and learning that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple hellos here. First of all, Jason, your first hello here from O'Fallon, Illinois. Mr. Peter Silva, the research team, is from rainy Southern California. I think you guys are getting a storm right now, right? Leslie, just north of Seattle. We got Aubrey as well from icy upstate New York. Got Josh from Ontario. I think it's actually a little bit warmer in Ontario right now, if I'm not mistaken. And Daniel Wolf, thanks for joining the show today from Frankfurt. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think my
So,
daughter's luggage is still in Frankfurt.
oh,
She
really?
she flew back to Germany for this semester, uh, Friday into Saturday, and she flew through Frankfurt, and she's in Friedrichshafen, which is kind of down on the, I think, on the Swiss border. But anyway, yeah,
Hmm.
they still have her luggage, and they haven't delivered it yet. So maybe you can
Oh,
put in a
no.
good word for us, Daniel, at the
Yeah.
airport.
Yeah. Let us know if you know anyone at the airport, Daniel. Pasilva, bomb cyclone or atmospheric river or whichever. All right. Well, good luck with that, Peter.
Hey, we got a South
And
America.
oh,
Jose,
nice. Hello.
welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for checking this out. All right, cool. So that's for all the live viewers. If you're listening to the podcast right now, you are able to watch this live. We live stream to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter if you want to interact with us. But by all means, if you want to consume us via audio podcast, please do. Now, you're speaking about iRule efficiency. Let's bring up one of the recent things that you published along with Jim Duker here. If I pull this up on the screen for folks who are listening again on audio right now, we have a technical article that Jason put together on community.f5.com. Free to check that out. iRule style guide, Jason. What did you put together here?
Yeah, so actually, this is almost all Jim's work. I just did some fancy formatting and threw in some snark in an article and called it good. But yeah, he and I have been going back. He actually, if you don't know Jim, he's the author of the iRules extension for VS Code. So if you are writing iRules in VS Code and using the F5 extension from Ben Gordon, the two of them are who you have to thank for that. And so all the linting that's there for your style in the iRules editor is all Jim. So, but he and I have been going back and forth, and he had shared this. I don't really know the context of the information he had shared, but I was like, wow, the community really needs to see this, and so this is. Again, and I say there in the first line, it's an opinionated way to write iRules, which means that not all of them may work for you. You may not like some of his decisions, but it is a guide to give you a framework, especially if you're new to writing iRules. It's just there to give you a framework for how you should write them versus how you should not write them, and some of them are potentially drive conflict between people. In fact, there is some give and take in the comments at the bottom, specifically around if you go down just to Kai's next comment, I think it's this one. And so it's whether or not you're going to use the iRules additions of EQ or NE, which equals or not equals, versus using the equal signs and the exclamation equal sign. And so to Kai's point, and I agree with him in that if you're doing iRules strictly from a performance perspective, there's a concept called polymorphism within computational solving, in that if your everything in Tickle is a string, but the way the interpreter evaluates things is if you have numbers and numbers, it will interpret that as an integer relationship. But because they're strings, it may, if you're using EQ, it may do a conversion in the bytecode, and you can look at bytecode through, like if you do any iRules tracing statements, you'll be able to see the bytecode and what's actually happening. But it'll interpret those strings, it'll convert them to integers, then do the comparison. Whereas if you just use the equal straight out of the gate, it'll just go ahead and do that numeric comparison. And so Kai is not wrong at all in that if your focus is performance, you should definitely want to use the appropriate operators for what you're comparing. If you're comparing strings, use EQ. If you're using numbers, use equal. And so he's not wrong in that. And so what Jim comes back here and talking about it, his next comments like he comes around and says the difference between two. So, that's one of the points I thought there would be some contention about. Another point in the style guide that I think there's a little bit of contention at is single line comparisons. So if especially for people who like to do debug statements within their iRules, you might have an if, and you define a static debug variable to set on and off, so that if you have a bunch of logging you do in the iRule that's just for diagnostic perspective, you want to be able to turn that on and off in one place, and you can do that in a variable that you establish. And if you have and maybe scroll down a little bit, and I'll point that out. Let's right there, number 5. So his advice is wait, I think you were down a little bit. I don't know why I said number 5. I think it's
8.
number 8. Sorry, it's number 8. Maybe I got a little stuck with the scroll there. But number 8. So Jim's recommendation is, if you have a debug, go ahead and expand the condition out, and don't leave it all on a single line. Now, for me, I probably wouldn't follow that particular piece of advice. I like it on a single line if it's a debug statement. Now, if it's ridiculously long, I'll go ahead and expand that out, because then you deal with readability left to right. So anyway, it's a great style guide in that it puts something out there for you to consider. A lot of them I think are no-brainers that you should definitely do that. Doing multiple commands on a single line, like number 7, that's a no-brainer. Don't do that. But some of them are, if they work for you, great. If they don't work for you, move along. And doesn't have to be a flame war or anything like that. I know with the MVPs we get into at one particular Agility conference that we're going, and everybody got a little heated on what language is the best and all that. It's like, hey, for me, it's use the right tool for the problem. And I love Python. Python's not the best tool for every single problem out there. I may make it work that way because I like writing Python, but it's not necessarily the best tool for the job. So you do what works for you, but this is something to get you started.
Yeah. Putting this into practice, when you're sharing iRules amongst teammates, hopefully, I guess, everybody maybe checks this out before they, I'm sure if you're already writing, if you're into iRules, you're probably experienced to some degree with some of this programming, but this might be something that you would suggest every teammate visits.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially if you write iRules in teams. And, I guess that's another thing. If you do any kind of, versioning of your iRules, and you have pre-commits that may look at, on the Python side, there's a tool called Black, and it's also very opinionated in how you format Python code. And so, you can have a pre-commit script that will go through and it will say, hey, is this formatted like Black? And if it's not, it'll reject even before you commit your code. And so, maybe you fold something like that into your iRules environment to where you check for those things in your pre-commit scripts. And if it isn't following the styles that you have established for an iRule, then you can kick it back, say, nope, this is not going to be readable to the company standard. But it also, even if you don't have the scripts, just being able to share code, you're going to have a common nomenclature for how you do stuff.
Yeah, cool. Leslie notes here, and this comes up with as far as the MVPs that you mentioned, Jason, but for those of you who are unaware, community.f5.com, what we do on there is we have these huge message forums on there, tens of thousands of people on there, and we have a number of folks that have kind of risen to the top of that pile, not saying that they're above anyone else, but in terms of contributions to the community, we recognize the ones that have been contributing the most, and we call that group the MVPs. Leslie is the program manager of that, and she's mentioning the conversation that was had around best programming language that we talked about there, and it's been lasting for 2 years at this point. But this group of MVPs, they get elected in or voted in every year. And so a number of them are long-standing MVPs at this point, and we've welcomed a number of new MVPs at this point this year as well. So if you head over to community.f5.com, if you're interested in something like that, there's a lot of benefits to being an MVP, having some contributions back to the community. If you are already an F5 customer and work a lot with F5, even if you aren't an F5 customer, but you have some sort of association where you can contribute back to what we're doing on community.f5.com, then worth checking out whether or not you can contribute a few things and get yourself nominated to be an MVP. It's fantastic to be able to work with these people and get their feedback on things like our product development and where we're going with things. So thank you to all of the MVPs that were just announced just last week here. So check out that article. Okay, moving on from that, we're going to talk a little bit about some news today. I'm going to bring up one of the ones that I had first because it has a little bit of a two-parter to it. And first bit of news that I want to talk about today is the headline is Microsoft acquires Fungible, a maker of data processing units or DPUs to bolster Azure. So these news articles, they're going to be listed on community.f5.com. You head over to the groups and there is a group called DevCentral Connects. So you can see a show thread on there. We list all these articles on here. And a couple months back, we actually had on Joel Moses from our office of the CTO, and we were talking about DPUs or XPUs. Now, this is an interesting one in that the Fungible, I hadn't actually seen the name of before. Microsoft picked them up for around $190 million for DPUs. And DPUs, if you're not familiar, we talked about this a little bit again a couple months ago, but they're specialized processing units that can be used for certain tasks inside of servers. Now, they had a $300 million VC investment, which would put their valuation far above $190 million. And so this is an interesting one because, up until a few months ago, everybody was making money. Whatever idea you had, if it had something to do with cool technology or cybersecurity, you were instantly a billionaire, it seemed like. But times have changed. And as far as Fungible, there's other DPU makers out there, NVIDIA with Bluefield, AMD snatched up Pensando. There's a couple other ones out there as well. So what Joel was talking about was the OPI project, or open programmable infrastructure project, open source project. A number of these players like NVIDIA and AMD are involved with that. And there's a quote in here saying, it's the Fungible DPU architecture was difficult to develop for, and that might have affected their momentum. The OPI project, what it does is it puts a bit of a layer in between so that folks can actually just develop towards the OPI project, and then that will take care of the interfaces to all the different DPUs out there, instead of some sort of rev in an operating system and all of a sudden everything's invalid and you have to rewrite your code or maintain multiple versions of code. One of Lori's, I asked Lori for a comment, Lori McVitie for a comment around this. And she was saying, you know what, for Microsoft, I think her point here is that Microsoft is big enough that they can take care of it themselves. Like, they own the technology stack end to end now. So they'll own the entire cloud. They'll own the DPUs as well that they'll put into their servers. And she mentions Microsoft and what they did with DirectX. So, DirectX puts a shim across all of that to be able to program nice graphics across whatever, as long as it supports DirectX. So they're in a good spot there, I think. And she also notes hardware matters again. Any thoughts on that one, Jason?
I think the hardware, Lori talking about hardware mattering again. It's like, it's kind of always mattered. It's just mattering more publicly, because as much as everybody likes to talk about concepts like serverless and all that, it's running somewhere. It just might not be your computer, but it's got to run somewhere. And so hardware's always been important. And even as everybody got really excited about innovation on the software side in these last really 2 decades, since the early 2000s, innovation has still been happening on the hardware side. It's been happening here at F5, and it's been happening in the COTS space as well, commercial off the shelf, if you're not familiar with that term. And so it's exciting to see it kind of be forefront again, because that's always been reality. It's just nice to see that reality acknowledged.
Yeah,
and I'm excited about OPI and where we're going with that, because as general compute has been around for a long time, and we wanted to try and fit everything into general compute. There's a reason why all of these startups are happening, is because some things just don't work well in general compute, and having purpose-built hardware is always going to be an important thing.
Yeah, people turn it into a business differentiator, and so now you have DPU capabilities inside of Azure, and you can harness. Your infrastructure is taken care of, your DPU hardware is taken care of, and then you can develop against it and create your business differentiator. No different than F5 with big IP and the differentiations that we've had inside of our hardware that have allowed us to leapfrog past competitors using our hardware as an advantage in many scenarios. This opens up possibilities for folks. So very cool to see that vote of confidence from Microsoft. It will be interesting to follow what they do there. One more article that I'll bring up, Jason, you brought up this one here: web hackers versus the auto industry, critical vulnerabilities in Ferrari, BMW, Rolls-Royce, Porsche, and more.
Yeah, and more means pretty much all of them. And so, if you get a chance, go out and read this article. It's just one of those things to where we're not even making it hard for people to steal our data. And this comes back to the most striking thing here is the Internet of Things type technology. And it's like, hey, let's create this thing, let's sell it to a bunch of people, and let's not really worry about security at all. And that's really the gist of at least the Hondas, Hyundais, Kias of the world. The ones with Ferrari, BMW, Rolls-Royce are a little bit different, but there's a general IoT functionality with remote access and remote starting and all that that a lot of the more common auto vendors here that we're familiar with at the kind of the standard level here in America. And it's just, you use that one technology, and as long as that particular company has that technology, they can walk up, read the VIN, do some stuff, and boom, they've opened the car, they started the car, they've taken my car. And also, by the way, they got all your personal data that's attached to that VIN as well. And so, it's scary stuff. And I'm amazed that, I guess I'm not amazed, because security's hard, because you've got to care. And at the beginning of a lot of efforts, it's dollar signs alone. And I know from talking to some individuals at some companies that all will remain nameless, they do risk analysis for that. And it's like, well, even if this comes back to bite us, we still make money. And so the risk is worth it to not care about security, which is a shame.
Yeah. Especially, it's one thing to steal somebody's Honda Civic. It's another thing, I think, to steal somebody's Tesla semi-truck with a container full of, I don't know, a bunch of electronics or something. Like, immediately the value of that vehicle that has been hijacked or whatever is going to happen to it has increased by 100 or 1,000-fold.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So we are at the top of the hour, so we will shut things down from here. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jason.
Thanks for having me. And for those that are going to be around at 11 a.m. Pacific this week, join me for a look at Advent of Code, iRules style.
Yeah, fantastic. Be sure to check out community.f5.com. Jason's going to have more info around that on there. All of the news articles that we talked about today, they'll be on there as well. A link to the iRule style guide will be on there. And there's a number of articles that we did not get to talk about today. So join us in some conversation on the show thread after this as well. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for watching today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you all next week.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Well, thanks for checking out that video. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. While you're down there, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. You might want to check out one of these videos over here. And if you haven't already, go check out community.f5.com. This is where all the DevCentral Connects hosts hang out, as well as the rest of the community. It's free to sign up, and we'll see you there.